Well, good morning and welcome to City Talk. It's a weekly program that we produce as a radio program, it's a podcast, a television program, and it's a time where we at the City of Waco want to have an opportunity to share with you information about things going on in the city. I'm Larry Holsey, Director of Municipal Information and Communication for the City of Waco, and we're doing this virtually for the first time in 17 years, 52 weeks a year. We're doing this first time virtually because of COVID-19. Guess what? Joining me now virtually is Jake Smith, who is the Public Information Officer for the Texas Department of Transportation. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning.
Well, glad to have you here. We're going to be talking about I-35, the construction and things like that. And so a little unique for me and everybody, I guess, to doing this virtually. You're actually working from home still. Is that right? Y'all offices?
Yes, we have been directed to stay at home as much as possible and trying to do our part to try to limit the COVID and really enforce these safety precautions. So I am at home right now and doing my work from here.
Certain advantages of that, and also disadvantages too. So anyway, it's a changed world we're in, the new norm. Well, talk to us a little bit about it. I know a lot of people always get involved with the traffic and know that I-35 is a long corridor. Maybe you can give us a little background of where I-35 goes from where to where, and then this particular part of construction is labeled 4B. I don't know what 4A, B, C, all that means, but help our people understand. And then we're going to get into the specifics of what's going on now and how far into this project we are. And just before we went on the air, I told you everything I knew about this. $341 million project over 4.5 years or so. So you take it from there.
That's about all there is to it. Let me say, I guess I'm honored. I am the first virtual guest you've had, so let me get that out of the way.
Okay.
So I-35, and yes, you're right. Wacoans and the community that we serve here, they're very familiar, obviously, with the road work and with the interstate itself and how our team has been out there for, we started in late April of 2019. And so now fast forward to now, we're still going on, we're still going at it. And so it's easy to just say, okay, well, I-35, there it is. And that's what it is. It's just the road work and they're improving it. And that is what's happening. But if we can kind of take a step back and, like you said, maybe give a little bit of background on I-35 itself and why crews are out there working as hard as they are. And so I-35 itself is a interstate that stretches from Mexico all the way up to Canada. This is a 1,500 mile or so stretch of interstate. And a third of that interstate resides within Texas. So you have about 500 or so miles residing in our state of Texas. And it's important to note that because of we need to emphasize just how vital the interstate is to Waco and to Texas and really internationally. And so you take that 500 miles or so of interstate that travels through here all the way, from in Texas, and there's a larger effort to improve I-35 from Laredo, down south in Laredo, all the way up to Dallas. And of course, that goes through Waco. And so with the improvement project, you're looking at I-35 in the interstate, and it's a big supporter of commerce and for people and residents and so you're looking at an interstate that supports all these factors in everyday life, and so improving it is kind of a no-brainer. And another background on that is that I-35 is actually part of what's called the Texas Triangle. And for those who may not be familiar, the Texas Triangle is part of basically three major legs of commerce and freeway and Texas population. And that's from Dallas down to Houston on 45, Houston over to San Antonio for I-10, and then San Antonio up to Dallas 35. And so it's important to keep up with that, with those legs, so to speak, and improve 35 overall. And so now that we're within Waco, that stretch in our corridor is being worked on. And then an important statistic that I think probably the most important one I'll talk about today is almost half of Texans. I mean, take the population of Texas. It's a big state, right? And 45% of Texans live along the I-35 corridor, from south to north, right? And so it's a major component to life. And like I said, almost half of Texans live here. It's projected that by 2040, that population that lives along the corridor, I-35, will increase by 82%.
Wow.
So you're looking at almost doubling the population in 2 decades. And if we're going to get specific with our community, Waco and McLennan County, we're looking at about 50,000 or so new residents within the next 20 years. That's a lot of people. And so, again, talking about that background of I-35, or at least how it relates to our corridor, you have to be ready and have an infrastructure and support for that capacity, for that incoming population and the commerce that comes with it. And so, breaking it down a bit, you're looking at a background of capacity, of infrastructure. The infrastructure itself. The infrastructure was erected or built in the 60s, and so that interstate out there is 60, give or take 60 years old, and so it's important to get that infrastructure upgraded and safe, and it should be said that by the end of the project, once the project is completed, the travelers and pedestrians will either be driving or walking on new pavement, and so that's also an important component of the background of that. Yeah. And so that's kind of the entirety of what was the thinking of going into 35 and why it needs to be improved.
A lot of people are familiar with the all the construction and the changes that went on down in the Temple, Salado, Belton, all that area, and that was on probably much the same scale as this project is, totally changing the lanes and on and off ramps and things. I think that's some of the things that's going on here. Now, kind of give me a definition of, I mentioned the word 4B. What is the designation? What was that one down in Salado and Belton area compared to here? And are we going to do this as soon as we're through with this one? Is that something we'll eventually get another 2A or something in our area?
Well, 4B relates to the Waco Corridor. It relates to what is currently being constructed, and you threw out that 341 million figure. That is 4B. It is this project that, and we'll get into this I think in a little bit, but the construction of the additional lanes and the frontage roads and everything to do with this corridor is related to 4B, and so when you talk about 4A, 4B, 4C, eventually just keeps going, but 4B I think is what anyone or the Wacoans watching is probably what they're familiar with and what will probably impact their life.
And that kind of goes like from, what is it, 8th or 12th Street? 12th Street out to Forest, or what is the defined spaces that we're talking about?
Well, you're looking at about, I guess if you're looking at the parameters of it, north you got Barron Circle, and maybe all the way south down to the south of MLK or south of the Brazos River, and so that straight, I believe it's 6 miles, and so that stretch of 4B, and like you said, that the totality of that 341 million going into this corridor, that even if it's, so to speak, not a large stretch of highway, but a lot being done to it in a very populous and dense metro area.
And the main thing, obviously, you are talking about adding a new main lane on both the northbound and the southbound, eliminating, as you indicated, this was constructed in the 60s, so there's a lot of ramps and things that have changed because of the access roads and things around our whole city and the county, for that matter, have changed a lot. So they're taking 50 or more years, 60 of changes and improving those and making some new on-ramps and getting rid of some old ones. We got rid of the old pedestrian thing that was over the top that was had challenges of its own. And so just some of those things are notable. And so the project is really, I think it's moving really good. And I got to give Weber Construction and you guys at TxDOT a whole lot of credit for making things not as miserable as they could be. And that's probably, I'm going to be blasted for saying that, but I think it's really doing really pretty good.
Well, certainly, a lot of credit to all the crew members, team members, and there's a lot of people working on this, and you're right. And behind the scenes, it's a lot of engineering and brain trust that goes into the decisions of that. I guess in your words, make it as least miserable as possible. But and again, we can get into that in a little bit. But there, like you said, there are some improvements being done, and like you said, the old infrastructure, the ramps. I know a lot of people have noticed the ramps are closed, and that's actually kind of going into the next part of what we can talk about is we talked about the background of I-35 and how it relates to Waco, but how do we make that practical? What are the goals or the improvements? And again, this is operating within the assumption that you may know about the road work about 35 and how it affects your commute, but you may not know why it's being done. I mean, other than okay, they're just improving it. But if we kind of break down of what the improvements are, practically, we're looking at, like you said, extending the main lane. So we're talking about 2 additional main lanes on each side, in both directions. And so we're extending the main lanes there, and then we're looking at the improved frontage roads and exit ramps or ramps, because like you said, the ramps need to be upgraded to be updated to safety and design standards, and to have that increased mobility around the ramps and to reduce that congestion. So that's another improvement goal that's on our mind, or that's on the team.
Yeah, one of the other things that I see that you listed in the little cheat sheet that you gave me that really was never thought of or was not in the older construction was U-turns, because now you can very easily decide if you've made a mistake and you want to go back the other direction. You don't have to go through a traffic circle or a traffic intersection or whatever. Talk a little bit about that. As well as on that same subject, we're talking about bicycle and pedestrian. These are other modes of transportation that we need to take consideration of.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And with the U-turns, you're looking at, once it's all said and done, 4 U-turns along the corridor. You're looking at U-Parks, MLK, Forest, and 77. A lot of traffic on those cross streets, and like you said, now with the simplicity of just U-turning as opposed to getting off, hitting the traffic light, and turning around, you have that U-turn. And so it's more than just improving, because I think when people think of improving or constructing the highway, they think of the main lanes, but there's these little intricacies that really make a difference and have a lot of impact, like these U-turns, like you said. In regard to bicycle and pedestrian safety, I'm glad you said that, because that is another project goal or another improvement goal that TxDOT has, because when it comes to transportation, obviously a lot of that is our motorists and vehicles, but we're also talking about pedestrians and bicyclists. Because it's a popular corridor with a lot of businesses, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of bicyclists, and so the improvement goals there are continuous sidewalks that will, again, once it's completed, continuous sidewalks that will allow or help pedestrians with foot traffic, and the frontage road will have kind of enlarged outside lanes on the frontage roads to be spacious and courteous to bicyclists. And so with those, we want to stress or emphasize that TxDOT takes the safety of all people, whether it's pedestrians, bicyclists, travelers on the roadway. We take their safety all seriously, and we want to implement these measures that will help them as well.
Okay. If you just joined us, we're visiting with Jake Smith, who's the Public Information Officer for the Texas Department of Transportation. And we're talking about I-35 4B construction project. And now we're going to get into, Jake, a little bit on the timeline that's going on, because you put out some great information, and I hope the community gets to see that. But I saw several, maybe it was a PowerPoint presentation at some point in time, but there was a graph that showed four pretty nice lines. It showed all the lanes and everything else. It showed in mid-2020, which is basically where we're at right now, where the construction is on the basically the southbound lanes is what's being constructed right now, because all the main lanes have been shifted to northbound in that compressed area. But the southbound is what's being constructed first. Tell us where we're at right now, and when we can expect maybe for that part to be constructed and be finished, so that then the northbound traffic, and everybody's on the northbound lane, will all be shifted, I believe, to the southbound, new traffic lanes. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So, and I think most people, that's probably the most asked question is, when is it going to be done? Or,
Yeah.
Which is a fair question. So, as I alluded to earlier, the project itself began late April 2019. So we're about, and with a scheduled completion date of 2023, we're about a year and some odd months into the project, but putting a number on it, about 30% of the time spent into the contract. Now that 30% is important to note, because we have to contrast it with how much money has been spent. And so you said earlier the project is at $341 million total, which is true. And as of June of 2020, last month, $162 million has been spent. So we're looking at 47% of time spent, of money spent versus 30% of time spent. And so that's what that indicates is actually great progress that the contractors are making, and they are well on their way to a scheduled completion date of 2023. So it's good there, and I think that's important to note that we're on that track and to meet that goal.
Well, some of the things that they're having to do are monumental as far as structure changes and things. Demolition of the bridge across the Brazos, for one. Taking down the pedestrian bridge, and some of the takedown things, as is they're doing right now, which I think is amazing to watch. We have a camera that we can take a look at off the Robinson Tower and keep a daily look at the bridge that they're under construction now. They're having to do that with pontoons and things. I mean, it's quite an interesting project that's going on over there.
Right, and you asked what is currently going on about the traffic being diverted from southbound to the northbound lanes. So currently, for those interested, what is currently happening, or what crews are currently working on, one, they're working on the southbound frontage road, which by the way is scheduled to be complete by fall of this year, fall 2020. The southbound frontage road will be done, and they're also working on the northbound frontage road. But right now, for the summer, what the big construction, so to speak, is like you said, the demolition or the demos of the beams that held the overpasses on the southbound main lanes. The beams are what hold the main lanes, and so you had to take those off, and that's why at night maybe people see some closures that are affecting the major cross streets of the overpasses, and so you have that traffic diverting from the southbound to northbound main lanes, so that the southbound main lanes could be constructed and placed on beams. And early next year, early 2021, the same thing will be done, but the opposite. The northbound lanes will be diverted to the southbound, so that the new northbound main lanes can be put in. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's currently is being worked on now, along with ramps.
It's a lot of dirt being moved, a lot of demolition, a lot of things are happening like that too. So, but the timeline is you're pleased, and you show that Weber Construction, who got the bid on this, and it has done another of the other projects throughout the I-35 corridor very successfully, doing a great job and getting people employed for that matter. But some of the discomfort and things that people don't like about inconvenience, that's just a part of it. You just can't go poof and it turns into magical, beautiful lanes and things.
Well, and you make a good point in that, you and I and the team over there, everyone experiences this road work, and it is constant and it's daily, and yes, that is, it's an obvious inconvenience to Wacoans and maybe to through travelers. But like you said, this won't happen overnight, but the team is making great progress, and so they're still on track to hit that completion goal of 2023. Mm-hmm. But one thing I did want to talk about, and kind of related to maybe someone sharing some frustrations about the project itself, is the communication and outreach efforts of the team. Because along with constructing a almost $350 million interstate, there's another part of the project that is vital, especially to the public at large, which is our communications and public outreach efforts. And I just want to say that there is a great team behind that, and they work hard every day to essentially get the word out. And that's why I want to talk about that, is because for anyone watching who may not know about these efforts or these venues in which they can get information that may help them, avoid a lane closure or plan ahead in terms of travel time. We have an online presence, of course, that's where a lot of people are. We encourage everyone to visit the website Waco4B, the letter B, map.org. And what this map is, or what this website is a live map that has just about everything you'll need. It has traffic cameras and live traffic cameras. It has closures, it has incidents, and anything you need to know before you grab your keys and head out the door. So I highly encourage everyone to visit that, and to visit our other website, my35.org/Waco. And this website is important because it not only has this general information about the project, but it has a way for you to sign up for email or text alerts about information about what's going on the project. And so you can, right in the palm of your hand, you can have up-to-date information. And so I highly encourage everyone to go to those websites or to follow us on social media. And at TxDOT, we have our Twitter, which is less specific about I-35 because we serve 8 counties, so we have a little bit more going on. But that's TxDOT Waco PIO, and then we have at I-35 Waco Travel. That is a one-stop shop for anyone on Twitter who's interested. Go follow them, and it basically just gives out live, up-to-date information about what's going on. And so I say that all to say that we do have that presence online, and with this show, or whether it's press releases to local newspapers or local media, we are getting the word out there in our public outreach, or even talking directly to businesses that are impacted by closures or by upcoming road work. And so we have a team that's out there knocking on doors at a safe distance, of course, and with CDC guidelines. Yeah. But talking to those businesses and along the corridor, just keeping them up to date. And so I'm really proud to say that there is a great team in place that reaches out to the public to keep them informed. And I encourage everyone, to follow us on Twitter, or to give us a call if there's just something that they missed or that we maybe didn't put out. Please let me know. They can go to TxDOT's website and go to the Waco section, and they can find a number to reach me. And please feel free to give me a call and with any questions they may have. But so to wrap that up, I to kind of respond to what you're saying about maybe people not sure of what's going on, or maybe they're just frustrated. We are trying to do our best to get that word out so they're best prepared that they can be.
Well, you mentioned about the people involved. I know I'm a part of the steering committee that meets somewhat regularly over I think it's over the South Waco Community Center, at least used to before we got virtually and everything else. That's a group of a lot of people across the community. I know Baylor University is involved, which brings the question, obviously Baylor right on I-35 and University Parks Drive, at least from that main part of it. I know 8th and all that has accesses and things like that. What can you tell our listeners and viewers about any plans or thoughts in preparation for, I think August 24th is when we're supposed to have 17,000 or more, 18,000 Baylor students returning to the Baylor area, and it's right there on the campus. I mean, can you tell us anything about special things that you all are trying to make sure or minimize as far as problems in that particular University Parks area?
Well, I can say this because I mean, obviously circumstances are fluid in terms of with COVID and how it affects all these institutions, and I can really only speak for TxDOT, but relating to Baylor or in that area, over the summer we kind of accelerated some work around the campus due to the or less traffic on the road due to the stay-at-home orders. So there was some work accelerated over there by the campus. But in terms of the future and what that may hold, hard to say because, again, this virus and how the government responses are sort of fluid. But we're willing to work and apply the best strategy going forward.
Well, I just mostly want to take the opportunity to let people know that coming up here August 24th is going to be a big day, supposedly, as right now the schedule are for Baylor students to be moving in, and that'll be a lot of traffic, even though this COVID restrictions and things, we're going to have a lot of the restaurants and hotels and things, at least for that time, filling up, and want to make sure people are ready maybe to avoid the downtown area in that area if they don't have to be there. We've got about a minute or so left, Jake, and I want to make sure I've covered everything you want to get out the word on, because you do such a great job and you've assumed this job. How long have you been in this position? You replaced Ken Roberts, so everybody remembers Ken. So how long have you been in the position?
5 months.
Okay.
And 4 3/4 months have been at home.
Yeah, virtually. Well, you've done a good job, and you've learned, and you're very vocal. You're very fluid in what you're saying, so obviously you know what you're doing, and I know you're regularly working with all the social media and all the web postings and things, because I get a lot of your communiques too, on just like I described earlier, and it's an amazing deal. In the last minute we have, what would you like to make sure our citizens know?
Well, TxDOT is rolling out a safety campaign that I really want to emphasize, and I know I got a minute, so I'll try to keep it brief, but it's called the Be Safe, Drive Smart campaign, and it relates to I-35 because it's really an emphasis on work zone awareness and really just slowing down and eliminating those distractions while you drive, putting the phone away and being aware of work zones. And of course that relates to us and hits home for us. And so keep mind of the work zones, and put away the cell phones, slow down, don't tailgate, and plan ahead. Like I said, we had all those resources that were available, so please plan ahead, and that's really what we want to get across is just be safe and drive smart.
Absolutely. Jake Smith, who is a Public Information Officer for the Texas Department of Transportation, TxDOT as we call him, has been our guest. Jake, our first virtual one, you did a great job, and we hope the message gets out that we know the construction's going on, but we're going to be thankful in 3 or 4 years, whenever it is, that it's all over with. Jake, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, everyone.
We hope you'll join us again next week for more information about the City of Waco on City Talk. This program is produced by the Municipal Information Department of the City of Waco and is provided as a public service by this station.